Hello and welcome to the International Schools Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Taylor, and on the podcast we discuss all aspects of technology and life in international schools, with new episodes live every 2 weeks. We focus on people who are currently working in schools, and we talk about life in their current country and dive into some specific topics. The podcast is brought to you by Acer for Education. People always ask what Chromebooks we recommend and what Windows laptops we recommend, and after trying literally all of them, we always recommend Acer. If you'd like to get more info and try out some devices, please just go to gg.gg/Acer Education. That's gg.gg/Acer Education, and we'll get right back to you. Also, the podcast is brought to you by Apps Events. We're a Google partner. We work all around the world. We've just got one piece of new information right now. This is in January 2021. We're a G Suite Enterprise for Education partner. That's Giuseppe. This is a bunch of premium tools available to people using Google at their schools. We can help you get set up with a free 1-month trial. So please check out the link in the show notes and we'll do that right away. And now, on to the interview. Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today I'm delighted to be talking to Pete Clements, who I met in Bangkok face-to-face. We both took a postgraduate course called the PGCEi, which we're going to talk about today at Nottingham University, but we took it in Bangkok and I'll explain how that works as well. Pete is an English teacher in Thailand and also has written some books and done a lot of interesting stuff. So welcome to the podcast, Pete.
Cheers.
Good, Alex. So this is interesting for me because we were sitting next to each other on the course. That's where we met. So we went out, went for beer and stuff. How you got into teaching and stuff, and how you ended up in Thailand. So it'd just be great to start from the beginning, I guess. And what did you do at university, and then what did you do in the world of work?
I did a degree in English language and communication, and then I did a master's straight after. I did an MSc in cognitive psychology, related to language as well. And then I moved pretty much straight into teaching from then after a year in insurance looking for work, and I moved into teaching. So I've been teaching now over a decade. And I was in Korea for a bit. I've been in Vietnam for a short time. Did some teacher training in Hungary and a little bit in Spain, back to the UK, and now Thailand. So
how did all these things come about? You mentioned was that your partner was working in these places, or did you apply for jobs in different countries? Like, I'd maybe start from the beginning. Like, how did you end up going to all these different places? Because some quite interesting countries there, pretty varied.
The first one was, it's one of those things where when I left uni, there wasn't a lot of opportunities, work opportunities. So I used the skills I had and that I'd gained on the degrees and the courses I'd done, and I applied for the EPIC scheme in Korea. It's a government scheme. So they had like an English teacher in every government school over there for a period of time. I think they've decreased that now. So I signed on for that, and I went over to Busan, south of South Korea, and was there for a couple of years, and that really started me off. I really got into the teaching then. When I was at university, I did do a training course that was the equivalent of like a CELTA course, which is the 1-month training to get into English language teaching. It's an initial teacher training, but it's an intense course for a month, but it's not the most rigorous. It kind of gives you some core skills to hit the ground running, really. So I had that, and after teaching for a couple of years, I realised, this is what I want to do. So I started to look into things like the diplomas for Delta and TESOL courses, and did a diploma in teaching English language.
That's interesting. We could do a whole episode on this, but from what I know about the English, ELT, teaching English as a foreign language, is like there's a huge spectrum of qualification. There's like people who are like in Prague. Okay, if I take an example where I live in Prague, there's tons of people here who are English teachers because they just come here and it's a job they can get. They don't have any skills, or they might have a very short course. I don't think it's the CELTA one. I think there's even maybe a shorter one, and they really have none. And it's kind of an entry level job. And then at the other end of the spectrum is probably someone like you who's like studied a lot of the psychology of language learning and everything. And then there's probably a spectrum in between, but there's a very big difference, I guess, in terms of if someone says they're an English teacher, it could mean pretty much anything,
Yeah, you're right. I mean, my neighbour actually, he's been struggling for work. He's a financial advisor, and I asked him how he was doing, and he said, "Oh, I've been picking up a bit of English teaching. He's never done it in his life, you know, and he's finding a way to get by, you know. So yeah, the spectrum is pretty broad, without a doubt. But you know, that doesn't mean that people that haven't necessarily followed a path of getting qualifications are good at teaching. Some of them are, most certainly are, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So where did you, obviously career? That's pretty cool. Where did you? How did you end up in these other places then?
I went to do after career, did a little bit of travelling, and then did a training course in Hungary. So that was the CELTA proper, because I had a CELTA equivalent, and I thought I'll get the CELTA proper.
Yeah.
And then was doing just random things like winter camps and stuff in Spain, while there was the opportunity available. Settled in England for a couple of years while my wife was doing the PGCE. She was teaching in Korea with me. I kind of dragged her over there. We actually met about 2 months before I took that job. We met at an English language teaching summer camp in England, and I said I'm off to Korea, and so we only knew each other for 2 months, and then she came and joined me over there. So it's a bit of a bold move, but yes, hence I then went back to England while she wanted to do her PGCE. So it was a bit of a compromise, you know. And I was teaching in language schools there, it was great. That's where I did my diploma, my DIP-TESOL, which is Trinity College London qualification. It takes about 9 months to do that one. Did that, and then it was, where are we going to go? Where's next? Once my wife had finished her NQT year, and she chose Thailand.
Right.
She chose Bangkok. She got a job at a school called Bangkok Patana. They took her straight after her NQT year, and I started work at the British Council. I started in Vietnam for a summer school period, and then came over to Thailand and joined her.
Interesting. Do you ever think, I mean, a lot of international schools really like teaching couples, and in a way it's a great way to do it as well, especially if you have children, you know, because then you can get, you know, tuition fees paid for 2 or more children in that case. Is that something you thought of, like to try to work at the same school and get the benefits of that and have the convenience of you being at the same school as I guess your child's pretty young still, but that doesn't affect you now, but is that something you thought about for now or in the future, try and do that?
I think that works for some people. I don't know how well if us working at the same school as much. It's a bit mixing, you know, work and home life and stuff. But it's nice to have it separate. But I mean, I wouldn't be averse to it, you know. I mean, possibly. But yeah, I know that sometimes when if some people come over to international schools as like a trailing spouse, right? So I had teaching qualifications, so I wanted to pursue like a different type of route. Working at the British Council is, you know, it's a good job in ELT, and I wanted to follow that path. But sometimes some training spouses will work possibly in EAL, possibly learning support roles. You know, I'm sure you're aware of these situations. It's possible to pick up those type of jobs.
Definitely.
And of course, you know, if you're a qualified teacher, you're laughing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, there's tons of stuff we could jump into. But what we're going to talk about today is the PGCEi, and specifically the one we both did at Nottingham University. So, you know, we were just saying before we started recording, there's not much written about it really, and you have written some great blog posts which I've linked about how to, you know, what should you do a PGCEi, what's involved, how to get a distinction. I think you did. So I think that's a great topic to jump into. Now, I'll start off with why I ended up in Bangkok. I mean, I run as people listen to this podcast probably know, I run an education technology company, Apps Events. We're a Google partner and we do training for schools. So I worked with schools, but I always worked on the technical side. You know, I've done sysadmin for schools, but I've never taught. So for me, I really just wanted to learn more about education. And you know what, I thought in the back of my mind about the possibility of working for an international school, because I've had kind of approaches to do kind of tech director roles, you know, some couple of schools. And I've kind of thought about it. I've kind of pushed it to the back of my mind for a while, because I'm still really enjoying running Apps Events. But it was two things. One, I wanted to learn about education, and And two, in the case I did want to work for an international school. But, I think I was very different to most people, I don't know if you want to talk about this, because you wrote in your blog post there was a kind of a range of people, but there's a few specific types of people who kind of were applying for the course.
Well, yeah, I mean, we met a lot of people on the course that were they had followed the English language teaching route. Some of them had some kind of basic qualification, whether that be a CELTA proper or maybe a 120-hour online TEFL course, these type of things, and they'd gone into some form of teaching somewhere, whether it was language teaching or a bilingual school or a state school, like in Thailand was our cohort. So that was like an opportunity for them to maybe like consolidate what they've been doing and add some level of formality and qualification to it. So that was I thought that was quite a common, maybe, I don't know, what you'd say, maybe about half of the people on the course.
You're probably right, yeah.
Maybe it seemed to be like that. There were people that were working at international schools already, but they weren't necessarily qualified. It depends on the tier of international school. So I don't think we have many people that were working for like the top schools like in Bangkok or the extremely sort of top tier international, considered top tier international schools. But we had some that were working at maybe mid tier or lower tier schools. Funny term that I've only used it since knowing about these international schools, but
people use it all the time, but they don't use it on the record. They use it like there is a definite stratification in people's minds. And but people don't. It's not something anyone ever talks about, but people do. But privately, they all talk about tiers, international schools, teachers, Yeah. But now, and in terms of a format, what's interesting is so in terms of Nottingham, there's a 4-day course in person, and I just happened to be in Thailand. We have a big Google event there, and I've been going there for years, So one of the guys I work with lives in Bangkok, so I was going to be out there anyway with my family. So I thought I'd do the Bangkok one now, but you can do this course in multiple locations. Obviously now when we're recording this in COVID, it's all online, but typically I think they're going to return, you can run it across Africa, Middle East.
I don't know if I looked at that website recently actually, and there was something interesting that I've seen pop up. It says become a facilitator for the course.
Now, I'm looking into that, funnily enough, you should say that, because I messaged Lucy about it. Lucy's the course director, and I said, like, I wouldn't mind running my own cohort. I think I can organize it better. I think the facilitator, effectively, it's a recruitment role. I think pretty much. You have to find people. You have to help find people. You help organize it. So I guess you organize a venue, because our event took place in a hotel. I think some take place in schools, but ours took place in a hotel. Quite a nice meeting room. And so but a lot of these are run by private organizations. For example, there's a company called, I think, Stafford Associates. They run the one in Dubai, or maybe all the ones in the Middle East even. So there are some people, and you get a fee, or I'm not sure exactly how it works. I haven't got the full details yet, but you can organize your own cohort or multiple cohorts.
The only thing, when I looked into it, the only thing that I was just flicking around on the website really. The one thing I wasn't sure about is it says that you would take the face-to-face component. So you would actually deliver it. So it would be. That's what I saw, which I thought was a little bit, because then the thing is, the face-to-face component, it was a week, 4 or 5 days long. Yeah, 4 days. And for me, that was a really, really important part of the course, because the whole other stuff, all the rest of it was online. And so then you spend the next 9-10 months interacting with people that you've met for 5 days, and you make me quite intensely do a lot of activities in that face-to-face time. But it was extremely important, and it was also important to kind of learn to build a rapport with your tutors,
Definitely.
Sorry.
Exactly. Let's give everyone a bit of a background. So the 4-day course, there was maybe, 50 people on our course, something like that, 40 or 50 people, I would say. And there was 3 tutors all came across from the University of Nottingham. And we had a couple of tasks before the day before. We had to do like an introduction, I think, talk about ourselves and what our background was. And then it was straight into it. It was, I have to say, really, the 4 days was really good. I don't know if you've got any feedback about the topics, but the high level picture is it was the only part of a course I really enjoyed was the 4 days online. I'm not a great online learner. I got through it, but it was a struggle. But the in-person part I thought was really, really good fun.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was great, and I thought they pitched it well as a good sort of reintroduction to like academic writing and stuff like that. That some features of it, and then it framed the first unit, the first module, that we were working on about the aims of education in international contexts. And
I think they could have done a good job with, I mean, they didn't organize any social events. I mean, we kind of self-organized and went out once. I don't know if you came along. I think you might have had to go, but there was a bit of self-organizing, but like there wasn't much social. Like when I run events, like I have something like every night. I always make sure people get together. I think that's just as important. That's what I think they maybe fell down on a little bit, but I think the content was good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and you got any thoughts about what we covered? I mean, like you said, it was an introduction. There, it's very much an introduction. We talked about in my opinion, it was kind of a few basic educational concepts. We got into like some real like first principles education stuff, and then stuff about academic writing, stuff about research method. It was kind of like a starting point to education and to academic writing. Presuming, I guess the audience, pretty much everyone has a degree, but no one's done any postgraduate work. That would be kind of the assumed level, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. In the you mean in the face-to-face? What did they cover in that? Yeah. It was sort of the reintroduction to academic writing, and they focused quite a lot on educational aims and the ethos of education, your views towards that, and I think that was really good in kind of shaping your ideas, like what in your context, where you're working, and how relevant it is, or how aligned it is to your own educational values, which really, I think it really helped leading into that first module, because there was a lot of, I don't know if you felt this, but in the forums, there was a lot more discussion, a lot more genuine and rich discussion in the first module. And I think it stemmed from that face-to-face component. People were, it was the start of the course and people maybe were a bit more driven then, but I feel like the conversation moving into the first module was a lot stronger.
Definitely. I think we should frame it in terms of what the modules were. So like you said, there's 3 modules. So you do the face-to-face. That's kind of just a pass or fail. I think you had to write a couple of small things in the course, but everyone, I'd be amazed if everyone in the history of it has ever failed the face-to-face part. And then there's 3 modules, and you get graded on, you write an assignment for each one. I think 5,000 words. Was it 5,000 or 4,000? I can't remember. I've already forgotten. But you get graded on each assignment. Now, we'll talk about it in a second about what the modules were. I found writing that first assignment really hard. Like I studied engineering, so I haven't written a lot of essays. I found it hard. Like I think if you've never done postgraduate study, I think if you've done an arts degree where you've had to write essays, you'll find it pretty easy. But I think if you come from a science background, you might struggle. But I got through it, so I think it's easy to get through it. I don't know what you think about the format and how people can approach it.
It's interesting. One person I was talking to quite a lot on the course was someone he was already teaching at an international school in Bangkok, but he was a master's in science. Yeah, he was a physics teacher, and his academic writing was mostly science based, and he was quite worried hearing that it was all going to be qualitative based research and a little bit more like social science oriented, and it just wasn't his writing style. So that was something. He got very knowledgeable guy, and obviously ended up doing really well on the course, and was able to get that style, that writing style, but it is very different, and he fit that. And I actually did a lot for my BA. I did a lot more qualitative research, and for my MSc, I did a lot more quantitative. And I converted at the time, thinking that I wasn't a fan of qualitative research, and I wanted something a little bit more. I felt like at the time a bit more meaty, a bit more with some numbers. I wanted some data, some not, okay, I haven't really put that well, but you know what I mean. I just wanted something. And I was looking forward to going back to the writing style of the PGCEi, where you can be a little bit more exploratory, not really come to some, you don't have to come to conclusions necessarily in the same way.
Yeah, it's true. It was, I mean, and like I say, and in the 4-day in-person part, they covered a lot of stuff about how you approach, the writing style. They talked everything from the beginning, like referencing and stuff as well. But they were very open-ended kind of assignments. Do you want to say a bit about what the 3 modules were? I don't know if you want to kick it off. Basically, there's 3 modules, and there's no options. So you couldn't choose. You didn't have any options. You literally had to take all 3 and write an essay for each. That was the only option. You could also do an audio presentation. I don't know. I'd be amazed if anyone did it. It looked a bit complicated, but you could do was it an audio or a video presentation as an option? But most people, I think, wrote the essay, or everyone.
Yeah. So you started with module 1 was educational aims and values in international contexts. So it explored a lot about educational codes. There was that key text from Mike Bottery, who was at the university, and he talked about the codes of education, the education for cultural transmission, education for the ecological code of education, and the economic code, things like this, and basically where you're aligned, what you feel the value of education is. There was a lot of exploring that. That was in the first module. We had to do process work to show that we'd read and developed an opinion on the core reading. So that was like 1,000-word process work. And then we went into an essay about kind of critiquing the educational aims of our own context.
Yeah.
And then module 2 was understanding teaching and learning in international contexts. So it was basically going from broad, general, overriding principles towards looking more at the pedagogical aspects of the teaching and learning and the approaches used, and critiquing their value in relation to your context. Yep. So that one had that module had a lot of spin-offs because there were so many different backgrounds of the cohort, the candidates on the cohort. So you did core modules, which were talking about understanding theories of learning, your classic ones like your Skinner, Vygotsky, Piaget, and then more recent research like the cognitive psychology research and memory and cognition that's come up a lot recently. And then there were spin-offs that you could do some optional mini units there on things like EAL, like I did, and then there were other things like questioning techniques or oracy, things like this. So then you looked at your own contexts and you looked at the approaches that were being used, and you critique them for their value in that. So I was looking at project-based learning, so that's what we were using at the British Council at the time, and looking at the value of that in my particular context. And then the final module 3 was a bit of independent research, and it was only qualitative based. So it was essentially a research methods module that focused quite a lot on ethics. I thought there was quite a lot covered on that, research ethics. And then you devised your own independent, very small scale qualitative research project.
Yeah, although we got some kind of strange exemptions because of COVID, where like we didn't actually have to run the project it ourselves. We could compare against existing literature and things, didn't we? Which is what I did. There
was a few contingency things in place for that.
That's a really good overview of the 3, I think. And in terms of logistically how it works, like you're on Moodle, which is a real pain. It's a kind of a very dated learning management system, LMS/VLE, in my opinion. I mean, I'm in the technology business. I see it like that. Maybe some people don't mind it, but you basically have a discussion forum, and you have to participate in the discussion as you go along. So everything you have to participate in. And I was quite good, actually. I mean, there were some interesting discussions on there. I mean, a lot of some modules I was by the end, half the course was just filling in a bunch of discussions on the last day just to get through it, I think, and then you wrote the assignment. Now, what you said before, I think is really interesting. Like, people were a lot keener and more engaged in the first module. I don't know about this format, it's, the face-to-face was great. First module was still close. I just think, distance learning is so hard, and there wasn't any video chat. There was no like synchronous chat between the group. We created our own WhatsApp group, which we've still got, and that was the only thing that I wouldn't have got through it without that WhatsApp group. And that was just something we did. The school didn't organize anything. I don't think I would have got through the course without the WhatsApp group personally, there was so many questions I had. I mean, maybe I would have asked for tutors all the questions, but it would have been a lot.
Yep, I agree. I felt a bit sort of cut adrift at times. And there were various reasons. I think that the tutors weren't necessarily responsive at certain times. And when COVID hit, it's totally understandable. There's a lot going on. I think format-wise, definitely more webinars needed throughout the course, seminars, check-ins.
Definitely. And in terms of what a qualification is, so I mean, you get the PGCEi. Obviously, it's not a PGCE, which is the UK qualification, but it has the same number of postgraduate credits, which is like a third of a master. So you can transfer them with Nottingham, as well as Sunderland. I'm doing. There's a bunch of other ones you can transfer the credits to, which is good. I mean, I think it operates in a real gray area because they're very clear on the website. It's not a teaching qualification, but it is treated as a teaching qualification depending on what school you apply to and depending on what country you apply to. It is. I mean, it's funny because teaching's in a way, it's unregulated. I mean, in the UK, my understanding is that if you want to work for a local authority, state school, you need a PGCE. But if you want to work for a trust or an independent school, they can choose to have whatever qualifications they want. So, you don't even need a PGCE to work for independent school. International schools, like we talked about the tier, which is a kind of vague level, the international school tiers, the top kind of level typically want a local country teaching qualification, but not always. And even the ones that say 100% they do, I know people who've worked there without, with a PGCEi or something. And then some countries will accept it and some countries won't accept it, So it's a real gray area, but the long and short of it is pretty much everyone on the course, or the majority of people on the course, were using it to get a teaching job in a international school. Was that your experience?
Yeah, and I think there was one article we read on the course about the types of international school teacher, and that basically said it all. That it, just like you say, there's a grey area. International school teachers are not all the same, and people come into it with very different backgrounds. And I think sometimes other international school teachers or people on the circuit don't necessarily realise how varied the colleagues, backgrounds of the colleagues they have, and it's been a surprise to me actually that the school I'm working at, surprisingly, I've mentioned that I've got the PGCEi, and people, one of the PE teachers, I did that 2 years ago, and one of the year 6 teachers, I did that like 5 years ago. So there's far more people than I realised actually did it, and they're working in a good international school, very established. It's
well, if you think about it, the Bangkok cohort that we did, there's 2 Bangkok cohorts, and say 50 on each, just guess, rough number, say 100 people a year. That's been going, I first looked at this like 5 or 6 years ago, at least. So it's been going for at least that length of time, maybe longer. So there's definitely probably a couple of thousand people, or maybe 1,000 teachers in Bangkok who've got this qualification, which it's not that many teachers, So I guess it's, it's more common than you think, I think.
Yeah, sure. The one thing I would say is, yes, definitely 100% of is a grey area qualification. But when I look at like forums that talk about, or for example, there's like a Facebook group of international educators, and if the PGCEi ever gets mentioned, there'll be so many people commenting saying, this has no value, and that's just not true. It's just not. It's in certain contexts it might definitely have restrictions. I know, for example, someone said in Hong Kong it won't get you work, but then there are other parts of the world where it definitely will. So I think being so sort of
that's not true. I remember the Canadian lady on our course. I'm still in touch with her actually. She works in Hong Kong, and she was on our cohort, and she's got a better job in Hong Kong from having a PGCEi. So even in the place where people will categorically tell you it doesn't work.
Well, there you go. See, yeah, it's easy to make these judgments, isn't it? Yeah.
It's funny, that's why discussion forums, you get people have these like crazy opinions, crazy views with an incredible amount of certainty. And then it's just what they're saying is wrong, you know, but they're saying it with such conviction. I mean, you look, you know, usually if it's a forum where you can click on their name, and typically they'll post multiple posts on the same topic, and it's their favorite topic, like why you shouldn't do this, qualification, whatever, you know. And that's not right. But it's international school teaching operates in a gray area, you know. It's the private sector. You've got a lot of types of schools, church schools to non-profit, obviously, to for-profit schools, to schools that are quasi-local. And even that is nebulous, because there's non-profit schools that have a consulting fees, and the consulting fee is the owner of the school. So, you know, it's a strange industry, you know, and I think that's why this maybe certification has been so successful, because so many people want to be go back to the UK, do a PGCE. I think the thing that would put most people off doing that is having to do the NQT, having to go and actually spend a year in the UK teaching, you know. And there is a way, I think, to do that in abroad. But I think the thing about this is you don't need to leave your job. You can keep working. You can get it in. Did it take us 9 months? I think it was 9 months from start to finish, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So look, I know we're getting close to time. Anything else you've got to add about the course? Because you've had some really good points about it.
Well, it's the same as any course that you're going to do training-wise. I think it is possible to treat the PGCEi as a tick box exercise, as with anything. My colleagues that have done it have said the same. You get out what you put in, really. You know, it's really there's some fantastic reading on the course. And that's the strength, is the core content is really, really interesting and engaging. So I would dedicate time to it. Don't read everything. You have to be kind of reading savvy, you know, because there's a lot to get through. So you've got to be quite efficient. But I would definitely dedicate time to thinking about the reading critically as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. I think I did that in the first module, and then I think second module I did it a bit, and third one it was just survival. I've just got to get this finished, to just get it over with, you know. Like, I think there was a lot of circumstance. I had a child, obviously, another child. There was COVID hit. COVID was the big thing, really, you know, just disruption. The world was going crazy, you know. Do you think? I think most people got through it. I mean, I only know what's in our WhatsApp group. I know 1 or 2 people finishing the third module. I don't know anyone that's dropped out. I mean, do you, or do you think everyone got through it?
No, I think some people just needed extensions for various reasons, right? As usual. But I think everyone's completed it. As far as I haven't seen anyone drop out.
Yeah. I mean, I would say in closing that, like, from my point of view, I'm not that academic. I got through it. I don't have any kind of arts background at all. I mean, in terms of, I've never written an academic paper in my life, you know, and I got through it. So I wouldn't be intimidated by it. I think if you're thinking not to do it because you think it's hard, I think if you've got a bachelor's degree, I think you need a bachelor's degree. I think if you have that basic level, I think you could probably get through it in most cases. I don't think it's much harder. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on the difficulty of it.
No, I'd agree. Totally doable. You know, I think it would be a nice course to do if you're thinking of doing an MA and you don't have if you're thinking of it as like the first sort of foundation module to do. That would be a nice way to do it, actually doing the PGCEi and then moving on to get the rest of the credits of an MA. It does give you good grounding, I think.
Exactly. And Nottingham, so I wasn't going to do an MA, but I finished, because you're right, because you've done a third of it. You can just finish if you had enough. You can keep going and do the MA. Now you can carry on with Nottingham. I actually just found one at Sunderland, which was it was cheaper, and it looked like a bit more interesting, the modules. So I just emailed them and he said, yeah, you can transfer the credits, come in, you know. So in terms of a cost, I think it was £3,000 something pounds, was it? It was under £4,000, wasn't it, the total cost? Which I think is
half, I think.
Yeah. Cool. Look, I want to be respectful of your time. Pete, look, great to chat. Where can people find you online? I'll drop links into your blog and stuff, but do you want to just say what your website is, or Twitter or anything?
I'm blogging at ELT Planning .com. So it's just a blog for teachers, developing teachers, sharing ideas about language teaching, mainly EAL, that sort of thing, materials writing as well, like how to get into writing your own resources for publishers.
Cool, and hopefully we'll get you back to talk about that, because I think that is a really interesting topic. I've also got a Facebook group, Educated Entrepreneurs, with a lot of teachers doing entrepreneurial things, and I think writing materials, which you've done successfully, is an interesting topic. So let's chat about that in the future.
Sure, yeah, nice one.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for your time, man. All the best.
Cheers.